me start by saying this. If you've ever dealt with a narcissist, you know it can feel like you're speaking to a wall that reflects only itself. Narcissism, at its core, is an inability to truly see others for who they are. It is an egocentric distortion that traps its holder in an endless cycle of self-obsession. But here's the paradox. The narcissist's fear of vulnerability is perhaps one of the most profound and defining characteristics of their behavior. At its core, vulnerability is the ability to expose oneself, to be open to the possibility of pain or rejection, but also to the possibility of true connection, growth, and transformation. For most people, vulnerability is an essential aspect of human existence, a necessary part of forming relationships, building trust, and experiencing deeper levels of understanding. However, for the narcissist, vulnerability is a terrifying prospect. To them, it is not just a personal weakness, it is a fundamental threat to their identity and the carefully constructed image they have spent so much of their life maintaining. Narcissism is rooted in insecurity. Beneath the grandiose persona, the false sense of superiority, and the ever-present need for admiration, there is a deep-seated fear of being exposed as inadequate or unworthy. The narcissist's entire sense of self-worth is tied to external validation. They seek admiration, praise, and attention from others as a means of reaffirming their inflated self-image. Vulnerability, however, is the antithesis of this need for external affirmation. To be vulnerable is to admit that one is not invincible, not perfect, and not above reproach. It means showing the cracks, the imperfections, and the flaws that they so desperately try to hide. And that, for the narcissist, is simply unacceptable. The fear of vulnerability manifests in a variety of ways. One of the most common is through emotional distance. Narcissists often keep others at arm's length, refusing to engage on a deep, meaningful level. They may appear charming, charismatic, and even warm at first. These traits are often used as tools for manipulation and control. The true self, the person beneath the facade, remains hidden. They fear that if they allow someone to get too close, they will be exposed, and their vulnerabilities will be laid bare. This fear drives them to create walls around themselves, often pushing away those who might otherwise offer real intimacy, connection, or understanding. Another way this fear shows up is through the narcissist's tendency to deflect and diffuse difficult emotions or conversations. They will often use humor, sarcasm, or even anger as a shield, avoiding anything that might make them feel vulnerable. If confronted with criticism, for example, they may become defensive, attacking the person who pointed out their flaws or deficiencies, rather than acknowledging any wrongdoing. This is because admitting vulnerability in the form of self-awareness or self-reflection feels like a surrender, a relinquishing of the power they believe they hold over others. Vulnerability in their eyes is a loss of control, and to lose control is to lose the illusion of strength and invulnerability that they have so carefully curated. The narcissist's fear of vulnerability is not only about protecting their image, it is also deeply tied to their fear of rejection and failure. To be vulnerable means to open oneself to the possibility of being judged, criticized, or dismissed. For the narcissist, rejection is not simply an emotional setback, it is a confirmation of their deepest fear, that they are not worthy, not enough, and ultimately unlovable. This fear of rejection is so overwhelming that the narcissist will often go to great lengths to avoid situations where they might be exposed to such judgment. They may avoid deep, meaningful relationships because they cannot bear the risk of being truly seen, or they may sabotage their own chances at success to protect themselves from the potential for failure. Furthermore, the narcissist's inability to embrace vulnerability prevents them from experiencing personal growth. Vulnerability is essential for change. It is the willingness to admit that one is flawed, that one does not have all the answers, and that there is always room for improvement. But the narcissist, trapped in their own pride and self-deception, cannot allow themselves to acknowledge these limitations. To do so would be to risk the collapse of the image they have built up over years of self-importance and self-illusion. They cannot admit weakness, because in their minds, weakness equals failure, and failure is simply not an option. This creates a paradox. The very thing that could lead to their personal evolution, the acceptance of vulnerability, is the thing they are most afraid of. And so they remain stuck, trapped in an endless cycle of self-protection and avoidance. In relationships, this fear of vulnerability can be particularly damaging. Narcissists often fail to form genuine, healthy connections with others because they are incapable of being open and authentic. They may demand that others be vulnerable with them, but they are unwilling to reciprocate. This creates an imbalance where the narcissist is constantly taking from others, but never giving in return. The narcissist may use others as a source of admiration, validation, and support, but they never allow themselves to truly see or be seen by those around them. This lack of emotional intimacy can lead to deep feelings of loneliness and isolation. Even as the narcissist continues to demand attention and admiration from others, ultimately the narcissist's fear of vulnerability keeps them locked in a cycle of self-deception and emotional avoidance. They may appear confident, charismatic, and in control, but beneath the surface, they are consumed by a fear that they will be exposed for who they truly are. This fear prevents them from forming genuine relationships, from experiencing true growth, and from ever finding the peace and fulfillment that comes from embracing vulnerability. Instead, they remain in a state of perpetual defensiveness, always guarding their image, always protecting their fragile ego. It is a life spent running from the very thing that could lead to their healing: vulnerability. The illusion of control is a defining feature of the narcissist's worldview. For them, the idea that they are in control of their lives, their environment, and the people around them is not merely a preference, it is a necessity. This illusion allows them to maintain the sense of power and superiority they crave. To acknowledge anything else, to accept that there are forces outside of their influence, would threaten the carefully constructed identity that they've built around their own invincibility. Control is both the shield they use to protect themselves from the unknown and the weapon they wield to assert their dominance over others. But in reality, this control is an illusion, a fragile construct that can easily be shattered when faced with the complexities of life. At its core, the narcissist's need for control is about managing their self-image. They have a deep-seated fear of being seen as weak, vulnerable, or incompetent. If they were to relinquish control in any area of their life, they risk being perceived as inadequate. This fear is especially potent in relationships, where the narcissist feels the need to manipulate and dominate those around them to maintain a sense of power. Relationships become transactional, with the narcissist seeking to control the dynamics through tactics like guilt, manipulation, and emotional coercion. They believe that if they can control how others perceive them, they can avoid the painful truth of their own inadequacies. The narcissist's illusion of control often extends to their environment as well. They feel the need to manage everything around them, whether it's their career, their social status, or the people they interact with. They believe that if they can orchestrate their surroundings, they can maintain a sense of order and superiority. In their minds, if they can dictate the outcome of every situation, they can ensure that they are always in the position of power. This desire for control can lead them to micromanage every aspect of their lives, from the smallest details to the biggest decisions. But the problem is that life, in its complexity, cannot be controlled in such a precise, calculated manner. Events are unpredictable, people are unpredictable, and the narcissist is often left scrambling when things do not go according to plan. Their attempt to control everything eventually leads to frustration, anxiety, and a sense of helplessness. The narcissist's need for control is also a defense mechanism against uncertainty. Life is full of unpredictable outcomes, and most people, though they may fear them, learn to accept this uncertainty as part of existence. The narcissist, however, cannot tolerate this uncertainty. They view unpredictability as a threat to their carefully crafted sense of self. If they cannot control a situation, they feel exposed, vulnerable, and out of their depth. This fear of the unknown often leads to rigid thinking and an inability to adapt to changing circumstances. They believe that if they can exert control over every aspect of their life, they can mitigate the risks of failure, rejection, and disappointment. However, this constant need for control only perpetuates their anxiety, as the reality of the world around them is far more chaotic and uncontrollable than they are willing to admit. This illusion of control often leads to the narcissist's inability to accept responsibility for their actions. If they cannot control every situation and outcome, they are quick to place blame on others. In their minds, failure is never their fault. It is always due to someone else's incompetence or disloyalty. This deflection of responsibility allows them to maintain their sense of superiority. By denying their own role in negative outcomes, they can preserve the illusion that they are always right, always in control, and always deserving of admiration. It is easier for them to blame external factors or other people than it is to confront their own limitations and mistakes. The need for control also extends to the narcissist relationships. They often seek to dominate those around them, not because they genuinely want to lead or protect, but because they fear being out of control. Narcissists often struggle to form equal partnerships as they view relationships as power struggles. They must always come out on top, whether through manipulation, guilt, or even outright aggression. This need for dominance in relationships ensures that the narcissist remains the center of attention and never has to share the spotlight with anyone else. They cannot tolerate the idea of someone else having power over them, because that would threaten their inflated sense of self. Instead, they seek to control the narrative, often bending the truth, gaslighting, or distorting facts to fit their desired outcome. This illusion of control is especially damaging to the narcissist's personal growth. In order to grow and evolve, one must first acknowledge that they do not have all the answers, that they do not have control over every aspect of their life, and that they are not infallible. But for the narcissist, this is a terrifying proposition. If they were to admit that they lack control in any area, they would have to face the reality of their own limitations and flaws. And this is something they cannot bear. They would rather maintain the illusion of control, even if it means sacrificing their ability to learn, adapt, and develop. The narcissist's illusion of control also creates a sense of isolation. While they may appear to have everything under control, the reality is that their relationships are often shallow and one-sided. They may push away anyone who challenges their authority or attempts to disrupt the status quo. They surround themselves with people who are either compliant or unable to confront them, further reinforcing their illusion of power. But this false sense of control comes at the cost of genuine, meaningful connection. The narcissist may have many superficial relationships, but few, if any, deep, trusting bonds. Without vulnerability, without a willingness to relinquish control and let others in, they are left with a life that is marked by loneliness. In the end, the narcissist's illusion of control is both their strength and their greatest weakness. It gives them a sense of power and security, but it also traps them in a cycle of anxiety, defensiveness, and isolation. The need for control prevents them from accepting the reality of life's unpredictability and prevents them from growing beyond the confines of their own limited perspective. The lack of true empathy is one of the most defining traits of narcissism and plays a central role in how a narcissist navigates their relationships and interactions with others. Empathy, at its core, is the ability to understand and share the feelings of another person. It involves not only recognizing someone else's emotions, but also being able to respond with genuine care, concern, and support. For most people, empathy is a natural human trait that helps foster connection, build trust, and create meaningful relationships. However, for the narcissist, empathy is not an innate quality. They either lack it or only demonstrate it in a very superficial, self-serving manner. This lack of empathy leaves them emotionally detached, often unable to form deep, meaningful connections with others, and leads to a pattern of exploitation and manipulation in their relationship. A narcissist's inability to empathize stems from their self-centered worldview. They view the world primarily through the lens of their own desires, needs, and emotional experiences. Their sense of self is inflated and fragile, and as a result, they are often consumed with maintaining their own image and status. This self-absorption leaves little room for genuine concern about the emotions or well-being of others. The narcissist is primarily concerned with how others perceive them, and their relationships tend to revolve around how much they can get from others, whether that be admiration, validation, or control. They may feign interest or sympathy, but these displays are typically shallow and only designed to further their own agenda. Any empathy that is shown is often transactional, given only to receive something in return, whether it's praise, attention, or compliance. One of the most striking features of a narcissist's lack of empathy is their inability to truly listen to others. In conversations, they may appear to listen, but their focus is rarely on the other person's words or feelings. Instead, they are primarily concerned with steering the conversation back to themselves. If someone is expressing pain, frustration, or vulnerability, a narcissist may respond with indifference, dismissiveness, or even ridicule. They may deflect the conversation by turning the focus onto their own problems, experiences, or achievements, refusing to acknowledge the emotional needs of the other person. This lack of active listening and disregard for another person's emotional state further isolates the narcissist and erodes any possibility of meaningful connection. Another manifestation of a narcissist's lack of empathy is their tendency to dehumanize others. Since the narcissist is unable to truly understand or care about the feelings of others, they often view people as tools or objects to be used for their own benefit. Whether it's in personal relationships, the workplace, or social interactions, people are seen as either sources of validation or obstacles to be overcome. The narcissist will often exploit others without remorse, using them to further their own agenda or inflate their own sense of self-importance. This dehumanizing attitude can lead to manipulative, controlling behaviors as the narcissist seeks to maintain power and dominance in every interaction. They may charm, deceive, or coerce others into complying with their desires, all while maintaining the illusion that they are the one being wronged or mistreated. The lack of empathy also plays a significant role in the narcissist's inability to maintain healthy, balanced relationships. In relationships with family, friends, or romantic partners, a narcissist's emotional indifference can cause immense harm. They may fail to provide the emotional support that others need, often leaving their partners feeling neglected, unimportant, or unloved. They may demand constant admiration and attention, but show little concern for their partner's emotional needs in return. The narcissist's inability to put themselves in another's shoes creates a one-sided dynamic where their own needs are always prioritized over the needs of others. This creates a toxic environment where the narcissist continually takes without ever giving back. In romantic relationships, this lack of empathy can be particularly damaging. A narcissist may initially appear charming, attentive, and loving, as they often know how to use empathy as a means of gaining admiration and affection. However, once the relationship deepens and the narcissist's true nature is revealed, their lack of genuine concern becomes evident. They may become emotionally distant, insensitive, or downright cruel, especially when their partner expresses emotions or desires that conflict with the narcissist's own needs. Narcissists tend to view relationships as a means of self-validation rather than an opportunity for mutual growth or connection. Their partners, on the other hand, may feel emotionally drained, neglected, or invalidated, as the narcissist is incapable of offering the emotional reciprocity required for a healthy relationship. This lack of empathy can also be seen in the way narcissists deal with conflict. In difficult situations or moments of tension, rather than seeking understanding or compromise, a narcissist will often escalate the conflict. They may gaslight their partner or manipulate the situation to make themselves appear as the victim. They are not interested in resolving the conflict in a way that respects the other person's feelings or needs, but rather in maintaining their own dominance and sense of control. Their inability to empathize with the other person's perspective leads to a cycle of blame, shame, and emotional volatility, making it nearly impossible to resolve issues in a healthy way. While the narcissist's lack of empathy may be easy to identify in personal relationships, it can also be seen in their professional and social interactions. In the workplace, narcissists may climb the ladder by stepping on others, taking credit for others' work, and exploiting colleagues to further their own ambitions. They may manipulate those around them, often using charm and flattery to secure favors or advance their own agenda. However, their lack of empathy for their coworkers' needs, desires, or aspirations can create a toxic work environment where trust and cooperation are eroded and morale suffers. Narcissists may also disregard the feelings of clients, customers, or anyone who stands in their way, focusing solely on how they can use others to gain success or recognition. Ultimately, the lack of true empathy in a narcissist is not just a flaw, it is a fundamental part of their personality disorder. It leads them to exploit, manipulate, and dehumanize others without a second thought. Their inability to understand or care about the emotional experiences of those around them leaves a trail of broken relationships, disillusioned friends and family members, and a profound sense of loneliness for both the narcissist and those they have hurt. It is a trait that defines their approach to life and their interactions, leading them to perpetuate cycles of harm and emotional distance. The denial of accountability is one of the most dangerous aspects of narcissistic behavior. It is not just a refusal to admit fault, but a deep-seated belief that the narcissist is exempt from the normal rules of responsibility and consequence. Accountability requires a person to acknowledge their actions, understand the impact they have on others, and take responsibility for their choices. For most people, it is an essential aspect of maturity and personal integrity. However, for the narcissist, accountability is a concept they actively avoid, as it threatens the carefully constructed image of perfection and invincibility they have built for themselves. This denial of responsibility is not just an occasional defense mechanism, but a pervasive and persistent pattern that permeates every aspect of their life. At the heart of the narcissist's denial of accountability lies their inability to accept criticism or admit any sort of personal flaw. Narcissists view themselves as superior beings, above reproach, and fundamentally incapable of making mistakes. Any suggestion that they have acted inappropriately, hurt someone, or failed in some way is seen as a direct attack on their sense of self. To acknowledge that they are wrong would be to undermine the entire facade they have so carefully constructed. Their grandiose self-image cannot coexist with any recognition of weakness, imperfection, or failure. Instead, they will deflect blame, distort the truth, or outright deny any wrongdoing, no matter how glaring it may be, to others. This refusal to accept responsibility creates a dynamic in which the narcissist consistently avoids any meaningful self-reflection. They live in a world where their actions are always justified, and the consequences of their behavior are either ignored or projected onto others. If a narcissist causes harm to someone, whether through emotional manipulation, deceit, or even outright cruelty, they will rarely, if ever, acknowledge their role in the situation. Instead, they may try to twist the narrative, making themselves appear as the victim or blaming the other person for their own pain or discomfort. This allows them to maintain the illusion that they are blameless, that they are not responsible for the mess they have created. The narcissist's denial of accountability can be seen in both their personal and professional lives. In relationships, this denial often leads to a toxic cycle of blame and manipulation. When conflicts arise, the narcissist will rarely take ownership of their part in the issue. Instead, they will blame their partner, friends, or family for the problems they themselves have caused. If they are confronted with their behavior, they may become defensive, lashing out, or even gaslighting the other person in an attempt to disorient them and avoid taking any responsibility. For instance, if a narcissist has been emotionally abusive or neglectful, they will often deny that their actions had any negative impact. They may accuse the other person of being too sensitive or irrational, thus avoiding any introspection or accountability. In the workplace, the narcissist's refusal to take responsibility for their actions is just as damaging. They may take credit for successes, using their charm and manipulation to secure praise and recognition, but when something goes wrong, they are quick to shift the blame onto others. If a project fails or a mistake is made, the narcissist will often distance themselves from the issue, placing the blame squarely on the shoulders of colleagues or subordinates. This refusal to own their mistakes creates a toxic work environment where trust is eroded and teamwork becomes impossible. Employees or co-workers who work with a narcissist may feel like they are walking on eggshells, constantly trying to avoid the narcissist's wrath while also absorbing the blame for things they did not cause. This denial of accountability also extends to the narcissist's inability to learn from their mistakes. Accountability is not just about acknowledging when something has gone wrong. It is also about taking corrective action and growing from the experience. However, because the narcissist refuses to accept responsibility, they are never able to learn from their errors. They may repeat the same destructive behaviors over and over again, never taking the opportunity to examine why things went wrong or how they might change in the future. This stagnation prevents personal growth and leaves the narcissist trapped in the same patterns of behavior, often causing irreparable damage to their relationships and reputation. One of the most destructive elements of the narcissist's denial of accountability is their ability to manipulate others into taking the blame for them. Narcissists are masters of manipulation, and they often use guilt, shame, and coercion to control the narrative and shift responsibility onto others. If they are confronted with their wrongdoings, they may use tactics like gaslighting, denial, or deflection to make the other person doubt their perception of events. They may even turn the situation around completely, making the other person feel guilty for confronting them in the first place. This ability to manipulate and deceive allows the narcissist to escape any consequences for their actions, while the other person is left feeling confused, invalidated, and emotionally drained. In the most extreme cases, the narcissist's denial of accountability can lead to criminal or unethical behavior. Because they believe they are above the law or that they are entitled to do whatever they want, narcissists may engage in behaviors that are illegal or harmful to others. They may lie, cheat, steal, or exploit people without any regard for the consequences. When caught, they will often deny the truth, lie their way out of the situation, or attempt to turn the blame onto someone else. This lack of accountability prevents them from ever facing the consequences of their actions and perpetuates a cycle of harm. Ultimately, the narcissist's refusal to accept responsibility is a central part of their disorder. It shields them from the discomfort of self-awareness and allows them to continue living in a world where they are never wrong, never accountable, and never forced to confront the darker aspects of themselves. This denial of accountability not only harms those around them, but also stunts the narcissist's own personal development. And it keeps them trapped in a cycle of self-deception where their world is constantly distorted to maintain the illusion of perfection and control. The fragility behind the facade is one of the most striking contradictions within the narcissistic personality. On the surface, narcissists often appear to be supremely confident, charismatic, and in full control of their lives. They exude an air of superiority, demanding admiration and respect from those around them. Their external persona is carefully crafted, designed to project an image of strength, success, and unshakable self-assurance. However, beneath this polished exterior lies an intensely fragile sense of self that is constantly threatened by even the slightest challenge to their inflated self-imposed projection. This fragile core is what drives much of the narcissist's behavior and explains why they react so defensively and aggressively to perceived slights, criticisms, or rejections. The fragility behind the narcissist's facade stems from a deep-seated insecurity that is often hidden from view. Despite their outward appearance of confidence, they are constantly seeking validation and reassurance from others to maintain their self-worth. This need for constant admiration is not just a desire for attention. It is a desperate attempt to fill the empty void that exists within them. The narcissist's grandiose self-doubt is not a reflection of their true sense of self, but a defense mechanism designed to protect them from feelings of inadequacy and self-doubt. The more they are able to convince others of their greatness, the more they are able to stave off the internal sense of emptiness that haunts them. This fragile sense of self is often the result of early life experiences, such as neglect, criticism, or emotional abuse, which lead to a lack of healthy self-esteem. Instead of developing a stable sense of self-worth, the narcissist identity becomes entangled with external validation and approval. They may have learned to hide their vulnerabilities behind a facade of confidence and superiority. But this facade is tenuous at best. The narcissist's sense of worth is entirely dependent on the praise and admiration of others, which creates a constant fear of rejection and failure. When this facade is threatened or shattered, the narcissist's fragile self-esteem crumbles, often resulting in an explosive emotional reaction. One of the most common ways the fragility behind the facade manifests is through extreme defensiveness. When confronted with any form of criticism, the narcissist often reacts with hostility, denial, or even rage. This is not because they are inherently aggressive, but because their sense of self is so fragile that any challenge to their image feels like a direct assault on their very identity. Rather than acknowledging their mistakes or flaws, they lash out at the person who has dared to question them. They may try to belittle the critic, discredit their opinions, or turn the situation around to make themselves appear as the victim. This defensive reaction is a way for the narcissist to protect the fragile ego that lies beneath the surface. In their minds, if they can't maintain the illusion of perfection, they risk falling into a state of worthlessness and shame. The narcissist's need to constantly maintain their facade also leads them to seek out people who will validate and reinforce their image. They are drawn to individuals who are willing to admire, praise, and cater to their needs. These relationships are often one-sided, with the narcissist expecting to receive all the attention while offering little in return. The narcissist's fragile sense of self cannot tolerate anyone who challenges their image or fails to provide the constant affirmation they crave. As a result, they may quickly discard relationships that no longer serve their need for validation, moving on to find someone who will boost their ego once again. The narcissist's interactions are often characterized by a cycle of idealization and devaluation, where they elevate someone to an idealized status only to tear them down when they no longer meet their needs. The fragility behind the facade also makes it difficult for the narcissist to accept vulnerability. Vulnerability, by its very nature, involves the willingness to expose one's weaknesses, flaws, and imperfections. For the narcissist, this is anathema to their carefully curated image of strength and invincibility. To be vulnerable would mean admitting that they are not perfect, that they are human, and that they have limitations. This is a terrifying prospect for someone whose self-worth is entirely dependent on the illusion of flawlessness. As a result, they go to great lengths to hide their vulnerabilities, even from those closest to them. This emotional distance prevents the narcissist from forming genuine, intimate connections, as they are unable or unwilling to share their true selves with others. Moreover, the fragility behind the narcissist's facade can manifest in an overwhelming fear of failure, because their self-worth is so tightly tied to external validation. Any failure, no matter how small, threatens to expose their deep-seated insecurities. They may become paralyzed by the fear of not being able to live up to the high expectations they have set for themselves and that others have for them. This fear can drive them to take extreme measures to avoid failure, whether through manipulation, deceit, or by setting unrealistic goals that are impossible to achieve. The pressure to maintain the facade of success can be immense, and when they inevitably encounter setbacks or disappointments, the narcissist may react with anger, frustration, or self-loathing. The more they invest in maintaining this illusion of success, the more fragile their sense of self becomes. In social situations, the narcissist's fragile ego can lead them to seek constant admiration and attention. They may monopolize conversations, drawing the focus to themselves and their accomplishments. If they feel that others are not paying enough attention to them, they may become irritated, resentful, or even jealous. This behavior is not a reflection of true self-confidence, but a desperate attempt to keep their fragile self-intent in. The narcissist fears being overlooked or ignored because it triggers feelings of worthlessness and insignificance. They are constantly trying to prove to others that they are worthy of admiration, all the while struggling to convince themselves of their own value. Ultimately, the fragility behind the narcissist's facade is a key factor that drives much of their destructive behavior. The more they build up their exterior persona, the more they depend on it to sustain their sense of self-worth. However, this reliance on external validation creates a fragile foundation that is easily shaken by criticism, failure, or rejection. The narcissist's need to protect this fragile sense of self leads them to manipulate, deceive, and even harm others to maintain the illusion of perfection. But no matter how much they work to protect their image, the underlying insecurity remains, always threatening to break through the cracks of their carefully constructed facade. Narcissists possess a remarkable ability to manipulate and control those around them, often without others even realizing it. One of the key elements of their manipulation is the use of charm and charisma to draw people in, creating an illusion of warmth, confidence, and likability. At the outset, a narcissist can be incredibly engaging, often displaying an infectious enthusiasm, a sharp wit, and an alluring presence. This behavior is carefully crafted to make others feel special, seen, and valued. But it's a performance, a tactic employed to establish dominance and influence. Narcissists thrive on the admiration and attention of others, and their charm is simply a tool to secure the validation they desperately need. They use their charisma to establish a connection, often rapidly gaining trust and admiration, which then sets the stage for their more subtle methods of control. Once they have drawn people into their orbit, narcissists are quick to manipulate the dynamics in their favor. They are incredibly attuned to the emotions and vulnerabilities of others, which allows them to exploit these weaknesses for their own benefit. Narcissists often prey on individuals who are emotionally sensitive, empathetic, or in need of reassurance, as they can easily manipulate them into fulfilling their own desires. One of the most common tactics they use is flattery, offering compliments and praise that feel genuine, yet are designed to manipulate the recipient into submission. The narcissist showers their target with attention, making them feel valued and important, only to later use this emotional leverage to control them. This creates a cycle where the target feels indebted to the narcissist, constantly seeking approval and validation in return for the praise they once received. Another form of manipulation commonly used by narcissists is the tactic of love bombing. This behavior involves overwhelming the target with excessive affection, admiration, and gestures of kindness. At first, this behavior can feel intoxicating. The target feels as though they are the center of the narcissist's universe, receiving attention that they may have longed for in other areas of their life. However, the true intention behind love bombing is to create dependency. The narcissist works to ensure that their target becomes emotionally reliant on them, believing that they are the source of all love, validation, and happiness. Once this dependency is established, the narcissist can then begin to slowly withdraw their affection and attention, creating an emotional roller coaster. This leaves the target confused, desperate for the affection they once received, and willing to do almost anything to regain the narcissist's approval. Narcissists also employ the tactic of gaslighting, a form of psychological manipulation that is designed to make the target doubt their own perceptions, memory, or reality. This method is often employed when the narcissist is confronted with something they don't want to acknowledge or when they want to cover up their actions. Gaslighting typically begins with small inconsistencies in the narcissist's words or behavior, which the target notices. However, when the target tries to bring up these inconsistencies, the narcissist denies them, dismisses them as unimportant, or twists the narrative to make the target feel as though they are imagining things. Over time, the target becomes increasingly unsure of themselves, questioning their own memory or understanding of events. This leaves the narcissist in control as the target becomes reliant on them for a sense of reality and truth. Gaslighting can be incredibly damaging to the target's mental health, as it undermines their self-confidence and sense of autonomy. In addition to gaslighting, narcissists often use the tactic of triangulation, which involves introducing a third party into the relationship in order to create jealousy, insecurity, or confusion. This could manifest in a variety of ways. The narcissist may constantly talk about how great someone else is, compare the target to others, or make them feel as though they are in competition with the third party for the narcissist's attention and approval. The purpose of triangulation is to manipulate the target's emotions, making them feel inadequate and dependent on the narcissist's approval. It also serves to distract the target from the narcissist's own flaws and failings, as the narcissist can redirect attention onto the third party, keeping the target off balance and focused on competing with others rather than seeing the truth of their manipulation. The narcissist's ability to control and manipulate is not limited to their personal relationships. In professional environments, they often use similar tactics to climb the social ladder, gain influence, and secure power. They can be highly skilled at creating an image of competence and success, using charm and flattery to win over colleagues, superiors, and clients. However, behind this polished exterior, they are usually focused on their own personal gain rather than contributing to the collective success of the group. Narcissists often use others as stepping stones to achieve their goals, taking credit for the work of others, undermining those who stand in their way, and using their charm to secure favors. They are quick to manipulate situations to their advantage, often exploiting their colleagues' hard work and effort without offering any genuine collaboration or support. One of the most insidious aspects of narcissistic manipulation is how difficult it can be to recognize. The narcissist's behavior is often cloaked in such charm and charisma that their true intentions remain hidden for a long time. People who interact with narcissists may find themselves drawn to them, enjoying their company and admiration, only to later realize that they have been manipulated into doing things that don't align with their own values or interests. Narcissists are particularly adept at using others for their own benefit, masking their exploitation with a veneer of affection, support, and flattery. This can make it incredibly difficult for individuals to disentangle themselves from the narcissist's grip, especially when they have become emotionally invested in the relationship. As a result, many people who are targeted by narcissists find themselves in toxic, one-sided relationships that drain their energy and self-esteem. The narcissist's ability to charm and manipulate others creates a sense of confusion, leaving the target unsure of where they stand. They may constantly question whether the narcissist truly cares for them or whether they are merely being used to serve the narcissist's needs. This emotional turmoil, coupled with the narcissist's ability to maintain control, creates an environment where the target feels trapped, unsure of how to break free from the manipulation without losing everything they've worked for or believed in.